Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. As you guys saw by the title, I will be reading my subscribers' spooky stories. So grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hi Daisy. It all started back when I was in the university, with nothing to do but idle away hours of boredom. My best friend and I, who were both obsessed with spooky stories, Reddit threads, and YouTube channels dedicated to the paranormal, decided to take a leap into the unknown. Out of curiosity and maybe a little recklessness, we decided to try an Ouija board. We didn't dive in without preparation. We did our homework. How to stay safe, be respectful, and dispose of the board properly. The one thing we did know was that we didn't want any lingering spirits following us back to our homes. So, we made a plan. We would find a secluded spot, far from the safety of our rooms, and attempt to contact whatever might be out there. It was supposed to be just the two of us, but on the day we decided to go through with it, another friend of ours, a fellow enthusiast of the spooky and strange, joined in. The more the merrier, right? It also helped ease some of our nerves. We didn't think to consider, though, whether our friend was truly prepared. As we gathered in secret, our first stop was the university grounds, a location we thought would be safe from prying eyes, but the risk of getting caught and perhaps labeled as practicing black magic, pushed us to my best friend's house instead, a bit more secluded and a lot safer. We started on the terrace, sitting around the board, but the planchette didn't move. We waited and waited. Nothing. It was dull, like something was missing. Disappointed, we headed back inside, deciding to try again in a more enclosed space. My friend's locked room. There was hesitation. You see, this wasn't just any room. My best friend had already felt strange, paranormal things in that very space, like strange noises at night, and the more terrifying experience where she saw the doorknob of her room being turned and pulled as if someone was trying to enter. She has also felt some kind of elderly presence in her house. Hence, she wasn't sure she wanted to stir up whatever might be lurking there. But at the same time, her curiosity got the better of her. So, we went ahead. We tried a few more times, but the board stayed silent. We were already following the advice we found online, turning off all electronics, sitting in silence, but nothing happened. That's when it hit us. Maybe we were doing this all wrong. We were approaching it in a Western way, speaking only English. For context, I live in India, so English is not really our first language. In fact, we have a lot of different cultures and languages here. We joked about how the spirits probably don't know English, and hence weren't replying to us. So we decided that we'd all take turns asking questions in each of our native language, hoping for a response. When it was our friend's turn, she asked, "Is there anyone who wants to talk to us?" The planchette shot across the board, right to yes. Suddenly, the air around us grew heavy, almost electric. It felt as though something had entered the room, something real. My best friend and I exchanged looks. Our excitement mingled with unease. We had been joking, but now we weren't sure if we were ready for whatever was about to happen next. Our friend asked more questions, and for a while, the planchette only responded to yes or no queries. But then she asked if she knew the spirit. Yes, it answered. The planchette began spelling out things, initials that matched her mother's name, and even letters pointing to their family's home address. At that moment, my friend gasped, her face going pale. "Guys," she whispered. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, her voice trembling. I think it's my grandfather." She broke down in tears. The air around us felt thick, heavy with emotion. We paused, unsure if we were just seeing things or if her unconscious movements were guiding the planchette. For the sake of clarity and probably some experiment having researched on psychomotor activities that usually explains Ouija boards, we asked her to take her hands off the board to see if it could still move. But the moment her hands lifted, the buzz of energy in the room disappeared. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. The planchette stopped moving. No responses came. No answers. We sat there stunned in silence, the weight of what we'd felt still lingering, but somehow gone. We tried again. Nothing. After a few long moments of trying to reach out again with no success, we decided to call it quits. The experience was unsettling, if not scary, but we followed the instructions we read online and disposed of the board properly. We left my friend's house, each of us heading to our own homes. That night, my best friend mentioned what happened to her sister, and that's when we learned something odd. While we were locked away in the room, their pet tortoise had been going absolutely wild. It had never acted like that before. Was it just stress or something more? To this day, we don't know if we were just caught up in the moment, if our friend was unprepared mentally, or if we actually made contact with something that wanted to communicate. What we do know is whatever we felt in that room, it felt real. And that's why we decided we would never, ever try an Ouija board again. Maybe we dodged a bullet, or maybe we didn't. Either way, some things are better left unexplored. Hello Daisy, my name's Michelle, and I've been a loyal subscriber for some time now and really enjoy your content, so I felt like it was finally time to share my story. I was 17 at the time, and I shared a room with my two older female cousins. Just to clarify, I wasn't under the influence of anything. No drugs, no alcohol. At the time, I worked night shifts and would sleep during the day. Even on my nights off, I struggled to sleep. So I would stay up scrolling on my phone or watching movies on my laptop. And this was one of those nights. For context, my oldest cousin and I shared a bunk bed. She was on the top bunk, and I was on the bottom, while our other cousin had a separate bed. Around 2 a.m., maybe closer to 3, I was watching a movie on my laptop when I heard my oldest cousin shift on the top bunk. I didn't think much of it. She often moved around at night. But suddenly, I got this strong feeling that something was off. I don't know why, but something inside me told me to close my laptop. So I did. As soon as I did, my cousin climbed down from the top bunk. I kept my head low, pretending to be asleep, and watched as she walked into the closet. Now, our closet wasn't big, and it didn't have a door, so I could still see her standing there. Her back turned to me. She doesn't have a history of sleepwalking, so this behavior was completely out of the ordinary. At this point, my heart was racing and my body felt ice cold, but I was too scared to move. I kept my eyes on her, afraid that if I looked away, something even stranger would happen. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped down on all fours and started mumbling gibberish. I couldn't understand most of it, but then I heard her whisper, pretending to be asleep. She had to be talking about me, as everyone else in the house had been fast asleep. If my heart wasn't already about to explode, that sent it into overdrive. But I still didn't move. And then, what happened next completely shook me. She didn't walk back up the steps to the top bunk. She slithered like a snake. I kid you not. Normally, when someone climbed up or down that bunk bed, you could hear every step. But this time, not a single sound. To this day, I stand by what I saw. My mom swears I was dreaming, but I know what I saw. Hello Daisy, my name is Britt. A couple of years ago, my uncle shared a story that I'll never forget. It happened when he went to a bar with his friends in Chihuahua, Mexico. They were out drinking, and he had more than enough to drink when a beautiful woman walked up to him and started a conversation. As the night went on, it got late, so he offered to give her a ride home, and she agreed. When he asked her where she lived, she told him it was behind a cemetery. He thought it was a little odd, but he brushed it off. When they arrived, he could see a small yellow house in the distance, but to get there, they had to walk through the cemetery. Again, he found it strange, but he ignored the feeling. Midway through, the woman suddenly stopped, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Ya llegamos. We're here." Confused, my uncle asked, "¿Cómo que ya llegamos? What do you mean we're here?" The moment he said that, the young woman fell into one of the tombs and disappeared. Terrified, my uncle ran back to his truck and sped away. The next morning, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman. He wasn't sure if he had imagined it because he was drunk or if what he saw was real. Gathering his courage, he went back to the small yellow house and knocked on the door. No one answered at first, but after the third knock, an old woman opened the door and asked how she could help him. He told her what happened the night before. As soon as he described the woman, the old lady's face changed. She looked scared. She told him that she had seen the same young woman walking alone in the cemetery many times before, and that he wasn't the first person to come to her house with this story. This happened in 2014 in San Diego, California. My family and I own a cleaning company, so we typically work at night when no one is in the offices. That night, it was my mom, my two sisters, and me working together. My oldest sister dropped us off since we only had one car. She went to her own job at the Scripps Research Institute, where she was responsible for cleaning the utensils used by scientists and feeding the lab animals. She was alone during her shift. Her first encounter happened as she was finishing up her cleaning station. A scientist walked into the room and she greeted him with a simple, "Hello there." He didn't respond. He just walked straight into his office and sat at his desk. She didn't think much of it at first, but after about 3 seconds, she did a double take because it was strange that he hadn't acknowledged her. Everyone there was always friendly. When she turned back to look, the office lights were off and the door was closed, and no one was there. Immediately, she got an eerie feeling. Our family is very Christian, and we've had our fair share of experiences with spirits, demons, and even exorcisms. Our parents always taught us what to do and say because we believe we have authority over anything trying to scare us. Well, my sister hurried to clean up and get out of there. As she walked outside, she saw 2 cars in the parking lot, ours and the janitor's, whom she knew well. However, she noticed a 3rd car with someone sitting inside. She could see the light from their phone illuminating their face. She thought nothing of it at first and kept walking toward our car. But as she got closer to the car, she got a sudden, strong, eerie feeling and turned to look back. The car was empty. There was no way anyone could have moved that fast or gotten out without making a sound. She jumped into our car, locked the doors, prayed, turned on the radio, and took off toward the office building where we were cleaning. While driving on the freeway, she suddenly felt a hand grab her shoulder and tug on it. She knew she was alone in the car, and she didn't dare to look behind her. She sped up and kept her eyes on the road. As she exited the freeway, approaching a railroad crossing, she saw a man in a white t-shirt standing near the tracks, waving at her to stop. His stomach was covered in train track imprints, with blood seeping through his shirt. She immediately knew something was wrong. Instead of stopping, she kept driving. When she finally got the courage to check her rear view mirror, there was no one on the tracks. No one in the back seat. Nothing. She sped to where we were cleaning and didn't say a word until she got inside. Meanwhile, at the office building, my mom, my sister, Eva, and I had started working. It was a 4-story building. My mom was in charge of cleaning the restrooms, Eva was vacuuming, and I was taking out the trash and dusting. We had always experienced strange things there. We'd hear our names called from the dark corners when we were alone. The automatic lights would turn on by themselves. And most disturbingly, there was a little girl in a white Victorian dress who was often seen on the 4th floor. That night, Eva was vacuuming alone on the 3rd floor when she got a bad feeling. It was the kind of floor where you had to walk past 5 dark offices for the automatic lights to turn on. As she did this, she heard my mom calling her name. She took her headphones out and responded, "Mande," but got no reply. She figured maybe she had imagined it, until she glanced down at the 2nd floor and saw me finishing up my trash duty. My mom wouldn't have left me alone, especially since I was only 13 at the time. She shook it off and continued to put her headphones back in and continued vacuuming. But as she reached the owner's office, she suddenly felt a gust of air blow directly into her face, so strong that her ponytail moved. She glanced toward the empty corner of the room. There was no fan, no open windows, just an eerie silence. At that moment, I stopped what I was doing. I don't know how to explain it, but Eva and I have always had a strong bond. We can feel when something is off with the other. Without even thinking, I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor. When I got there, she looked flustered, but relieved to see me. She didn't tell me anything. I think she didn't want to scare me since I still had work to do. My sister was almost done vacuuming, so I went back to the 2nd floor, and she took the elevator down to the 1st. As she stood there waiting for the doors to close, she felt uneasy. She prayed out loud, "Señor, manda tus ángeles con sus espadas desenvainadas para que me protejan. Lord, send your angels with their drawn swords to protect me." Immediately, she saw a flash of light. It wasn't from anything physical, but she could see the glow reflecting off what looked like armor. The elevator doors opened, and she hurried out. We all eventually met on the 1st floor, and just as we were about to leave, my sister got a call from our dad, who was living in Tijuana at the time. He said he had been sleeping when he had a nightmare, and when he woke up, he couldn't move. At the foot, he saw a tall, dark figure standing over him. He tried to speak, but couldn't. Finally, he managed to whisper, "Jesus," and just like that, the shadows disappeared. As soon as he could move again, he started praying for our family. That's when Eva finally broke down and told us what had happened to her that night. Before we could even react, my oldest sister, Leslie, burst through the door. She looked pale, like she was about to pass out. My mom rushed to her. "Leslie, ¿qué te pasó?" All she did was run into my mom's arms and sob. Then she told us everything. We huddled together, holding hands, and prayed. We didn't leave each other's side until we were all done. I don't know why all 3 of them were attacked at the same time, but I thank God for protecting them when they called out to him. As for the man in the white t-shirt near the train tracks, that was in Sereno Valley, California. If anyone knows anything about him, I'm interested in finding out more about it. I tried looking up information, but I couldn't find anything. And trust me, I have many, many more stories about life as a nighttime janitor. Hi, my name is Erica, and I have a story I'd like to share with you. When I was around 21 or 22 years old, I lived with my dad for about 3 months. He lived in Arkansas at that time. I'm from California, born and raised. My father is Mexican from the state of Zacatecas. According to my mother, my dad had an uncle who was a shaman. He was known for practicing black magic. There were rumors that my grandmother almost lost my dad while she was pregnant with him, and in desperation, she turned to black magic to save his life. Ever since he was a little boy, my dad was known for being different. My grandmother once told me he was a very bad child. He would kill any living thing he could get his hands on, from birds to cats, dogs, etc. Many people who knew my dad told my mother that their marriage was the result of black magic. They claimed that my dad's uncle had a jar with both of their pictures tied together on an altar. When my dad's uncle died, they found 10 jars on his altar, each containing pictures of different couples. That same year, all 10 couples divorced. My mother has always told me that she does not remember her marriage to my father. She says she felt as if she was on autopilot during the entire marriage, as if she was just going through the motions of life. I wanted to give you some backstory because I believe it might help explain the experience I had while living with my dad. We shared a bedroom. He had a twin bed, and I slept on the bed while he slept on the floor. There was one night I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. I remember feeling a deep sense of dread, coldness, and fear. I was facing the wall and tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to shift my position to get more comfortable, and as I turned my head toward my dad, I saw something that still haunts me to this day. Standing near him was a figure that looked like La Muerte, what some people call La Santa Muerte, as they came out of the bathroom, moving unnaturally fast, as if it had come through a portal that was still open. The entity began making an upside-down cross over my dad, repeating the motion over and over. I was frozen in fear. I remember praying desperately that it wouldn't look at me. Even though the room was dark, the moon was particularly bright that night, and its light shined through the large window, which is how I was able to see everything so clearly. Slowly, I turned my head back toward the wall and continued praying to God, begging to fall asleep. Not long after that night, I left Arkansas and returned to California. I've only told a few people about this experience, but no one has been able to explain what I saw. To this day, I still think about that night and it terrifies me. This is just one of my stories. I have had other experiences, and I also have gifts. For a while, they faded, but recently, they started coming back. Hello, Daisy. I would like to stay anonymous for now. My story takes place in Chihuahua, Mexico, back in 2015. I was 11 years old at that time. I live in the US, but my mom decided we should visit Mexico during my summer break to spend time with family since almost all of our relatives are from there. My family lives in one of the more run-down barrios, where it can be dangerous to walk alone because of the gangs and kidnappings that used to be common. Because of this, I was never alone in this story that I'm about to share. I was close to my cousin, who was around the same age as me, so we were always together. She moved around a lot, going from house to house, and to be honest, all of her houses creeped me out. But there was one in particular that still sends chills down my spine every time I walk past it. Whenever we visited Mexico, we always stayed at my grandma's house. My cousin's house was only a 5-minute walk from there. Like I mentioned before, my grandma's neighborhood was pretty run down. Most of the houses were old and worn out, but my cousin's house was different. Her house was beautiful. It was 2 stories, freshly painted white, and looked pristine compared to the others. It had a massive white see-through gate and 4 large windows. But despite its appearance, there was something about the house that felt off. At the time, Netflix was a big deal, and my cousin was the only one who had access to it. My sister and 2 of my older cousins would often go to her house just to watch movies. Well, one afternoon, my cousin and I were at my grandma's house when we got bored and decided to go watch a movie at her place. Since we knew my sister and cousins were already inside, my cousin didn't bother asking her mom for the house key. We walked over and knocked on the door. No one answered. We knocked again, and still nothing. After waiting a while, we decided to sit near a small food store across the street from her house. Since her windows were thin, we figured my sister and cousins would eventually hear us. My cousin started calling out my sister's name, yelling for her to open the door. We kept calling for about 5 minutes, when suddenly, someone peeked through the upstairs window. The curtain moved slightly, and I saw a girl with long dark hair wearing a long white dress. She looked almost exactly like my sister. My cousin shouted at her again to open the door. Instead of responding, the girl just pointed at us and smiled, but not a normal smile. It was mocking, almost as if she was taunting us. At that point, we were mad. It was obvious they were messing with us. We assumed they were just playing around, ignoring us on purpose. My cousin ran back to my grandmother's house to complain to her mom about how my sister and cousin wouldn't let us in. My mom ended up calling my sister and scolding her for not opening the door. By the time we walked back, they finally opened the door for us. My cousin, still annoyed, asked why they didn't open the door when they clearly had seen us outside. That's when they told us something that made my heart drop. They swore they never left the room. For context, in the house, all the bedrooms and bathrooms were downstairs, while the kitchen and living room were upstairs. They explained that they had been watching a movie in my aunt's room the entire time and never heard us calling them. I started arguing with them, thinking they were lying. They always liked to mess with us since we were younger than them, but as I kept arguing, I noticed something. I looked at what they were wearing. None of them were wearing white. That's when I realized whoever we saw upstairs wasn't any of them. I still don't know exactly what I saw that day, but I truly believe it was a ghost. After that incident, my sister started telling me that every night around 1 a.m., she would hear small footsteps running up and down the stairs. It might not be the scariest story, but at that moment, it was the most terrifying experience of my life. So that was it for today's spooky stories. Thank you to everyone that shared their encounters. If you have a spooky story that you'd like to share with us, please send it in at daicyspooks@gmail.com. We would love to hear your guys' stories. But that was it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys all in my next one. Bye!